Hey guys, I am the Spuddler, and if you are new to my channel, welcome. On my channel, I explore many subjects, some true crime related, others about history, others simply about the things in my life that I enjoy learning more about. So, it is pretty potluck what type of video you get, but they will always be full of facts and jump-off points for further research and maybe a few giggles along the way. In this video, I am going to go through what I discovered about autistic elopement, a behaviour which affects nearly half those diagnosed with some level of autism. So, I am going to roll the intro, and then I can begin telling you what I found out. Autism, or autism spectrum disorder, ASD, is a developmental condition characterized by differences in social communication, behavior, and sensory processing. It's called a spectrum because it includes a wide range of abilities and challenges that can vary greatly from person to person, and it is believed that around 1% of the global population is on the spectrum. Many people with autism experience challenges in social settings, which can include difficulty with verbal and nonverbal communication, interpreting social cues, and forming relationships. Some may struggle with eye contact, have delayed speech development, or use alternative forms of communication. Individuals on the spectrum often engage in repetitive behaviours, such as hand flapping or repeating words, and may have strong preferences for routines. Disruptions to these routines can sometimes cause distress. Many autistic individuals have heightened or reduced sensitivity to sensory inputs. For instance, bright lights, loud sounds, or certain textures can be overwhelming or uncomfortable, while others may seek out sensory experiences that are calming or stimulating. Autism presents differently in each person. Some people may be highly verbal and intellectual, while others might have co-occurring challenges, such as intellectual disabilities or epilepsy. Personally, I believe that autism is part of our evolution as a species. And in fact, many key figures are autistic, such as Elon Musk and Anthony Hopkins, to name just two. I like to think of these and all the other people with a high-functioning classification of ASD as having superpowers, and here are the superpowers that they all share to a greater or lesser degree. It is important to remember, though, that every individual will have their own unique balance of these superpowers, and as with us all, this uniqueness helps to define their individualism. So what are these superpowers? Many autistic people have an exceptional eye for detail. This skill can translate into strengths in fields that require precision, such as mathematics, coding, design, engineering, and scientific research. People with autism often become deeply focused on topics or activities that interest them. This ability to concentrate intensely can lead to deep expertise and knowledge, sometimes making them experts in their areas of interest. Autistic individuals often display strong memory skills, particularly when it comes to facts, patterns, and sequences. Many can spot patterns that others may overlook, making them great at analytical tasks, data analysis, or puzzles. Many people with autism approach problems differently and think outside the box. This creativity and fresh perspective can lead to innovative ideas and solutions, especially in creative fields like art, music, writing, and design. Autistic individuals tend to be very honest and straightforward, often without the social filters others might have. This honesty can make them trustworthy and loyal friends and colleagues, as they tend to avoid manipulation and value transparency. Autistic people often think in a logical, structured way, which allows them to approach problems objectively. This can make them highly effective in roles that require critical thinking, problem-solving, and analyzing complex systems. Many autistic people prefer routines and are consistent in their work and behaviour, which can make them highly reliable. This consistency can be a strength in environments where steady performance is valued, such as jobs with routine tasks or long-term projects. Some autistic individuals experience heightened sensory perception, allowing them to notice things others might miss, such as subtle changes in sounds, colours, textures, or smells. While this can be overwhelming at times, it can also enhance their appreciation for sensory details, which can be beneficial in fields like art, cooking, and music. Autistic people often bring a strong sense of passion to the activities and subjects they care about, investing significant time, energy, and enthusiasm. This can lead to exceptional achievements, particularly in areas they enjoy. Many autistic people have a keen sense of right and wrong and are deeply affected by issues of fairness and justice. This strong moral compass can make them advocates for social change, often standing up for others and seeking to make a positive impact. While autism affects social interactions, some autistic people bring a refreshing approach to relationships. They may prefer honest, straightforward communication, often connecting deeply with a few people rather than maintaining superficial social networks. Navigating a world that may not always be autism-friendly requires resilience, and many autistic individuals develop strong coping strategies. This adaptability can build personal strength, self-awareness, and a unique perspective on overcoming challenges. These strengths show that autism brings valuable perspectives and capabilities that contribute positively to individuals, their communities, and even society as a whole. Embracing and supporting these strengths can help autistic individuals thrive, highlighting the diversity and value they bring to the world. The concept of neurodiversity promotes the idea that autism is a naturally occurring difference rather than a disorder to be fixed. Rather than always hearing about the challenges that an autistic person has, it was nice to actually acknowledge the heightened abilities that come with ASD. However, with these superpowers, there are also the challenges that those with ASD and their carers have to contend with on a daily basis. And although I do not believe that I am on the spectrum, I can relate to the potential loneliness and isolation that may be part of this condition. And I should imagine that the world is a confusing, frightening, and at times overwhelming place to be in for a person with ASD, and one that at times may make no sense whatsoever. And it is generally understood that autism comes with a multitude of challenges, and autistic elopement is one of the most dangerous behavioural aspects of this condition. Sadly, if you are into true crime, all too often we are immersed in stories of such horror and evil, and if we do not take time to rebalance our reality to fit more in line with how things really are, it is very easy to begin to see the world in a very dark light. So, one thing I try to do is acknowledge the good moments. This helps me to not fall into the well of despair about humanity, and it also helps me keep my logic intact and my emotions in balance. Recently I found out about a young man called Leonardo Cepeda Cavazos, who went missing from his home in the middle of the night, leaving with nothing more than the clothes on his back and a small rucksack. At the time of his disappearance, he wasn't wearing shoes, and he had expertly wiped his electronics of all social media and other personal data. And, as with Sebastian Rogers, he was a young man that was diagnosed with high-functioning ASD and loved gaming. Luckily, Leonardo was found within a few days, so before I talk about autistic elopement, let's just take a moment, listen to the post on Facebook that Leonardo's mother made after she was reunited with her son, and acknowledge that not every story has an unhappy ending. Of course, as with my voice, I am using a voice changer to speak this mother's words.
The search for my son, Leonardo Cepeda Cavazos, has ended satisfactorily. Oh my God! Infinite thanks for all the angels you placed in our path, family, friends, and the community in general. My son is safe and sound. All the financial support we received will be returned to those who generously helped us. And the emotional support we've received is something I can never repay. Leonardo, I love you deeply, and it is an honor that you chose us as your parents in this life. You have no words to express the pain I felt during these 8 days, and the immense joy I experienced when I held you in my arms again. You want to wholeheartedly thank the incredible group of people from Windsor, who tirelessly supported my family and me I don't have enough words to express my gratitude. My son is alive and safe.
So before we move on to exactly what autistic elopement is, let's just let this mother's joy fill our hearts with happiness and optimism, as without a conscious effort to experience, acknowledge, and make a memory of these good times, the bad that we learn about every day can easily encompass us and distort our perspective on things. So it is important to embrace the good moments whenever they happen, just to balance things out a bit. I was listening to a live recently about Leonardo and hearing the details of his disappearance, and it instantly struck me that there were a number of similarities between his case and that of the disappearance of Sebastian Rogers. And of course, me being the spuddler, I wanted to know why, and I began to ask Google and ChatGPT a few questions. There was one phrase came up a lot, and that was the term autistic elopement. So, as a starting point for my research, I asked ChatGPT what the term meant, and I posted the answer as a community post last week. What ChatGPT returned was really informative, but as I tend to use that program as a jump-off point for my research, I decided to do some further reading. Autistic elopement, which is often referred to as wandering, is one of the greatest dangers that a person with ASD, that is, autism spectrum disorder, are at risk of doing. Wandering often infers travel without a purpose, but from what I have read, people with ASD elope with a very specific purpose in mind, so the word wandering can be a little misleading in my opinion. Autistic elopement is where an individual with ASD leaves a safe or supervised area without permission or awareness of potential dangers. From what I have read, it is believed that nearly 50% of those with ASD will have repeated elopement tendencies. However, some may elope or attempt to elope on only one singular occasion, and often, these sudden disappearances happen without warning, leaving parents and caregivers baffled as to the cause. Sadly, people with ASD have a far higher mortality rate than the general population. People with autism who don't have an intellectual disability have a mortality rate that's 1.71 times higher than people without autism, and those who also have an intellectual disability have a mortality rate that's a staggering 2.83 times higher than people without autism. That statistic I personally found alarming, and from learning a little on this subject, I discovered that after medical issues, autistic elopement is the largest cause of serious injury and sometimes even death within this group. Having a tendency to run off or elope puts a person in a very risky situation, especially if they are not aware of the dangers that surround them. And from the research I have done, there are two main risk factors, traffic and water, with drowning being a significant instance of autistic elopement that has often sadly led to death. Accurate information on the actual number of children and adults with ASD that go missing every year is very hard to find, and it does appear that this information is not being formally collected at a federal level in America, or anywhere else, to be honest. There seems to be a little more data relating to those with ASD that come to harm after running off, or eloping from a place of safety. And just as an example, here are the figures released by Palm Beach, Florida about the level of the issue in their area. In a report entitled The Rise in Drownings of Children with Autism in Florida by John Burstein of Children's Services, Council of Palm Beach County, and published probably last year. Sorry, I couldn't find a date. The report was written after 3 children, Tafin Chowdhury, age 10, Dahoud Julakur, age 5, and Alina Finellis, age 6, all drowned in Palm Beach within a 5-month period from September 2022 to January 2023, and all 3 were autistic. This report states,
the drowning deaths of these 3 children prompted Children's Services Council of Palm Beach County, CSCPBC, to take a closer look at drownings involving children with autism in Palm Beach County. What began as a local effort grew into a statewide examination of drowning deaths of children who have been diagnosed with autism or were suspected of being autistic. It is commonly accepted that children with autism are at a greater risk of drowning than other children, but there has been minimal data gathered to support it. Based on CSCPBC's work, we have found that since January 1, 2021, at least 63 children with autism or suspected of having autism have drowned in Florida. During that time span, the majority of drowning cases in Florida of children at least 5 years old involve a child with autism. Since January 1st, 2012, 109 children with autism or suspected or having autism have drowned in Florida. The amount of information CSCPBC obtained for each case varied. CSCPBC believes the number of drownings involving children with autism to be higher than the number documented in this report.
It is obvious to me that there is a significant risk from drowning of children and even some adults with ASD, and is a notable contributor to the higher mortality rates in those with autism. It has been understood for a while that a lot of people on the spectrum have a fascination with water, and in fact, parents of children with autism are encouraged to teach their child how to swim as early as possible. So I wanted to know more about autistic elopement, and although again, there is little information out there, I did find a recording of an online webinar presented by the Kennedy Krieger Institute and entitled Wandering and Elopement in Autism. This presentation states that the higher mortality rate for those with autism is due in part to this common and very serious behaviour. Here is a slide from that presentation, which shows the difference in elopement tendencies between the general public and those with ASD. In fact, for this study, they selected autistic children with siblings to compare the data against, ensuring that the environments were the same to improve the accuracy of their data. As you can see from the chart, those with ASD have a far higher risk of elopement than their siblings. Now, children running away is always a concern for a parent, whether that child be 4 or 14. But with ASD, not only is the likelihood of elopement far higher, but the dangers that they face are huge. Children with ASD are unlikely to be aware of the dangers that surround them, and their relative naivety can lead to even greater risks, not only from the environment, but also from predators. Although the events that may trigger a person with autism into running away or eloping are numerous and varied, there are some common things that are currently identified as reasons for a child or autistic adult to run off. Here are some of the main triggers. Sensory seeking. Some autistic individuals may elope to seek specific sensory experiences. For example, they might be drawn to water, lights, or sounds in the environment. This could explain why many wanderers are found near bodies of water, like lakes or pools. Sensory overload. On the opposite end, individuals may also elope to escape an environment that is overstimulating or overwhelming, such as a noisy room, crowded area, or place with intense lighting. Wandering becomes a way to self-regulate and find a calm, quieter space. Individuals with ASD may wander out of curiosity or a strong desire to explore new surroundings. They may not fully understand the concept of safety boundaries and can be motivated by a specific area, object, or activity that interests them, like a nearby playground, a park, or an open door leading outside. Changes in routine or environment can be difficult for people with autism to process, and wandering may occur as a way to seek out familiarity. For example, if an autistic child is visiting a new place, they may try to return to a known or comfortable place, even if it's far away. This drive to return to a familiar location can override concerns about safety. Stressful situations, particularly those involving social interaction, pressure, or changes in the environment, can cause anxiety for people with autism. Elopement may serve as a coping mechanism to leave a situation they perceive as stressful, unpredictable, or emotionally overwhelming. For those with limited verbal communication skills, elopement can sometimes serve as a way to express needs or wants when they cannot communicate them verbally. For example, a child who wants to go to the playground but cannot ask may decide to leave and go there themselves. In some cases, elopement can be triggered by a desire to seek a particular reaction from caregivers or peers. This behaviour might not stem from a specific goal, but rather from an expectation of how people will react, for instance, running off and enjoying the caregiver's reaction. Many individuals with autism have difficulty understanding the concept of danger or the potential risks involved in wandering. They may not recognise that leaving a safe environment can lead to hazardous situations, such as getting lost or entering an area with traffic. This lack of awareness can make the risks of wandering higher for individuals with ASD. Some people with autism experience difficulties with impulse control, making them more likely to act on sudden urges. If they get an idea to leave or explore, they may do so impulsively, without thinking through the potential consequences. Goal-oriented elopement is intentional and motivated by a clear desire to achieve a goal. For instance, the individual may wander to get to a specific place they want to go, like a favourite store, a friend's house, or a nearby landmark. This type of wandering is often purposeful, even if the route is unsafe. So, there appears to be many things that can trigger an elopement, and from the information that the Krieger Institute included in their presentation, there are often very few warning signs that a parent can look for. In fact, when an elopement did occur, a lot of the parents reported that their child was particularly focused on something shortly before they left, with other parents noting that their child seemed content shortly before they ran off. Whatever the cause of the disappearance, it does seem vital that those searching for the child are aware of all the child's interests, likes and dislikes, and emotional triggers in the home or other places that they have recently visited, such as, say, an argument in the family, or even a recent trip to a new or favourite restaurant. From what I understand, all of the triggers for elopement appear to be when the child is especially emotional, whether that be happy or sad, angry or excited. Really anything that the child finds either overwhelming, whether that be something frightening, triggering anger and anxiety, or conversely something positive, such as the discovery of a new texture, hobby, or even having a new friend, can equally trigger an elopement. And of course it is important to recognise that the decision to elope may be instant and may not be due to a build-up of emotions or changes in behaviour normally associated with a child running away. And as a parent, I can imagine this is incredibly difficult to manage, as all too often there are no real signs that the child is about to elope, and with the often too critical world that we live in, these parents are often blamed when an elopement occurs, citing a bad home life, or the parents don't care enough, or even suggestions that it was the child's ASD that meant the parents did not want their child. Hopefully though, now that you understand a little more about what autistic elopement is, and how difficult and sometimes illogical it can be, with the lack of obvious behaviour prior to the elopement shown, we really should not blame the parents of a child with ASD for that child's disappearance. As you now know, when it comes to running away or eloping, a child with autism is not only driven by very different needs to that of a child who is not on the spectrum, but their triggers are equally as difficult to understand. After doing this research, I have become very aware of at least some of the challenges that a parent with an autistic child has, and just as we may see the mind of a person with ASD as nonsensical and irrational, I suspect that they see us in exactly the same way. Just knowing a little about how it feels to not understand the people around you and the chaotic aspects of life, I should imagine that those with ASD feel a level of anxiety constantly, and when they are either not able to communicate their needs properly or the importance of their need is not understood, I can understand why they often have meltdowns. I cannot imagine how hard it must be to try to raise a child with ASD, and at times I should imagine it is like trying to communicate with your child in a different language. Before we ever begin to criticise these parents, we need to stop and remember the challenges that they must surely face daily, over and above those of a regular parent, and acknowledge their accomplishments. I also like to think that these parents are in fact bringing up the next Elon Musk or Anthony Hopkins. They are raising the next generation of people with superpowers, and we should support, encourage and thank these men and women, not disparage, criticise and judge them on the standards we consider for raising a child. After all, they are not raising children, they are raising superheroes in my opinion. Anyway, that brings me to the end of this video. Those who stuck with me to the end, I thank you, and please hit the like button, it will help my channel to grow, and I would as usual love to read your comments. Also, if you have any particular subject that you would like me to research and create a video on, please let me know in the comments and I will see what I can do. Thanks again for watching, I really appreciate all the support and I will see you in my next video.